Hi, I'm Nicola.
And I'm Julia.
And we're the project leaders from YMCA Malta on the My Voice to Europe project.
My Voice to Europe is an Erasmus Plus project co-funded by the European Union that is being administered through the European Union Programmes Agency.
My Voice to Europe has brought together a group of young people to share their thoughts, ideas, and research on topics that they deemed important for the Maltese Islands.
These young people have developed 13 important themes and produced 13 podcasts with stakeholders, young people, and professionals related to the theme.
Keep watching and engage with the discussion in the comments.
Hi, good evening, and thank you for accepting to be part of this podcast. This podcast is called Radiant Minds, Resilient Bodies, and we would like to explore the impact of physical activity and general physical well-being, and it's on the mental health of youths. So the impact of physical activity on youth mental health. Welcome, both of you. I'm going to start with Sarah. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and your background and why you're here today?
Sure. So I'm a health psychologist by profession and also a Gestalt psychotherapist. I've naturally always been interested as a health psychologist in the link between our physical, mental, and even social well-being. I work with the National Health Service, and in my work, I basically see a lot of people with ill health, unfortunately, and chronic health problems like especially obesity and chronic pain, as well as other health conditions. So I really believe in the importance of promoting healthy behaviors, especially among young people, in order to prevent ill health in the future as well, and the consequences that come with ill health. Wherever possible. So I was very excited to see the invite from Nicola a few days ago.
Bernice?
Nice to meet you, Sarah, and
Same here,
Karin as well. Thank you for the invite as well. So I'm a performance sports and exercise psychologist. Basically, I studied at the University of Edinburgh and Liverpool John Moores University, apart from Malta, of course. I'm also an athlete. So I used to be an athlete in CrossFit before I had a spine surgery, and then moved to natural bodybuilding because that was the best sport for me. Based on the advice of the surgeon, because I needed to build the muscle to protect my bones. I used to do even Thai boxing, yoga, and many different other sports, but now I'm focused on natural bodybuilding, which I'm hoping to bring in Malta as well, because we still haven't ever had the natural side of bodybuilding. I also do my other stuff, like with the Olympic Committee in Malta, with the Football Association, lecturing at MCAST and the university, and also a consultant for the new sports school that will be opening in September, the Mediterranean College of Sport. Plus also worked with all kinds of athletes in all kinds of sports, both in Malta and abroad, even, for example, Liverpool Football Club, national basketball team for Scotland, and many other sports.
Thank you. My name is Karin. I come from a background of psychology. I am studying Gestalt right now. I will be asking you the questions, but I also have a background. I do CrossFit. I guess that makes me an athlete. I believe a lot in moving your body in a general way. Let's just get started with the first question. I would like to ask you, Sarah, define mental health and why is it relevant to young people?
Okay, so first of all, mental health is not just simply the absence of a mental disorder. I very much like, to be honest, the definition given by the World Health Organization on mental health. So I see it as basically a state of overall well-being that allows people to cope with the daily stresses of life and also acknowledge their own abilities in general. It allows them to learn well, work well, and also contribute to the community. It is very much an integral component of health, so it cannot also be separated from physical health. And it also plays an important role in our ability to make decisions, build relationships in life, and also, as I said, contribute to the world and shape the world we live in. I think it is extremely relevant to young people, first of all, when we see even the statistics out there today. 1 in 7 10 to 19-year-olds tend to experience a mental disorder, according to quite recent statistics, and depression, anxiety, and behavioral disorders are a significant contribution to illness and disability among adolescents. Suicide is also the 4th leading cause of death among 15 to 29-year-olds, and these statistics really worry me. Apart from that, adolescence is also a time of a lot of change, physically, emotionally, socially, and even contextually, different schools, maybe starting a job. And this can make adolescents particularly vulnerable to certain mental health problems and social exclusion, and risk-taking behaviors and other difficulties, which could put them at risk. Also, I think mental health and physical health is really important in adolescence, because it at a young age, it lays the foundation for their health in the future as well. Apart from that as well, ill mental health is also linked to poorer self-care behaviors like poorer diet, less exercise, which could also then negatively impact the person's physical health as well. And it becomes basically a vicious cycle, something I tend to see quite a lot, where poor mental health contributes to poor physical health, and poor physical health then impacts the person's mental well-being. So basically, in a nutshell, I believe that by promoting a young person's mental health, we're kind of hitting 2 birds with 1 stone and really protecting their physical and mental well-being, both now and also in the future as well.
Yeah, if I should carry on with this, I agree totally with Sarah. In fact, that I believe that good mental health doesn't mean that there are no stresses in life. It means that one is coping despite those stresses. So they are still functioning well, they can still go to their job, they can still do their exercise, they can still, but they are also dealing with some stresses in life, which might be difficult. In fact, there's also terminology of high-functioning, anxious people, which, let's face it, most people in high jobs are all dealing with their demons and their anxieties. So it's there, but they're still functioning. The relevance, I mean, Sarah already mentioned a lot of good ones, but to add a bit more, we need to keep in mind the fact that life today is so fast-paced that it's barely giving us time to think about ourselves and take a breather and stop every once in a while. In fact, when we look at COVID, most people got worse because of the lack of social contact, but some people got even better because of the better quality of life and getting in touch with their own family. So we could see that shift there. Additionally, the fact that both parents nowadays work. So the children are most of the time neglected of that emotional connection, that emotional space with their parents. And even if they're physically there, their parents might be responding to the emails at home or still dealing with some other after work issues. Apart from that, the aspect of social media nowadays, which we can't get away anywhere from it. The fact that even, for example, in sports, parents put up their children on social media when they win, but they don't put them up when they just played. So that's sending a message that you're only worthy when you win. So we need to keep in mind how we're using the social media, not to the point of obsession, that because we tend to go from one extreme to the other. It's not like every single thing is doomed. No, It's more like just be a bit more cautious in what we put out there on social media, both from the kids' side, because they barely know the impact of what they're doing with posting out there. It's not like talking to a friend. You're talking to the world by posting it out there. And also from the parents' point of view, that this child is not consenting to every single thing that you're putting out there. So let's discuss with them before we just blurt things out.
Include them because their opinion, of course, for that point. Back to you, Sarah. How do you think, believe, or see even physical activity contributes to the overall well-being, particularly for young people?
Okay, so this I feel it has sort of the physical activity contributes in a very holistic manner really to their well-being. So first of all, the first thing that comes to mind perhaps is on the physical level, where physical activity can contribute to cardiorespiratory fitness. It helps build strong bones, especially when young people are still growing. Control weight, reduce the risk of developing health conditions like diabetes, heart disease, osteoporosis, high blood pressure, obesity, things I tend to see a lot in my work. On the mental health level then, especially with adolescents, I believe physical activity really is important in improving the adolescents' physical self-concept, the way they look at their bodies, their perceived competence, and also their self-esteem. There's a lot of research out there as well that shows that physical activity is linked to lower levels of anxiety and depression in adolescents. And some studies have actually also found it can be helpful as a treatment to reduce anxiety and depression in adolescents already diagnosed. On the social aspect, I believe that physical activity can also serve as an opportunity for adolescents to make social connections, something which I feel, especially after COVID, adolescents have really suffered from. Dr. Bernice mentioned it just now. Also on the cognitive level now, and I think that physical activity can really contribute in a beneficial way. So there is evidence that physical activity in adolescents can also impact their executive functioning. By this, I'm referring to how they monitor, regulate information in the brain. And this is really important for goal-directed behaviors, memory, attention. It's a bit difficult exactly to assess kind of directly the impact of physical activity on adolescents' academic performance and achievement, but sort of the findings so far are quite positive in suggesting that yes, there is likely to also be a positive impact. So that's an added bonus when adolescents are often going through a lot of exams and other schooling, basically. Finally, as well, on the more behavioral level, then exercise can be a very healthy form of coping and emotional regulation. As we were saying earlier, life is going to bring stresses, and adolescents really and young people in general need to learn those skills to cope with those stresses. It's an important part of mental health. And exercise can also contribute to improved sleep, which is also very, very important for overall well-being. And in adolescents, especially, poor sleep has been associated with behavioral difficulties and also negative impacts on their cognitive processes, like higher order functioning. And so it could also negatively affect their academic achievement. So it's a very kind of multidimensional impact. There's the physical, the mental, the cognitive, behavioral. So it affects on multiple levels, in my opinion.
I really like that you mentioned the social aspect. One of my favorite parts of going to the gym, especially when I go like early in the morning. At least I know that I'm not, it's like a community. There are other people.
Exactly.
And we're all doing it for ourselves, but there's a sense of encouraging each other. There's a sense of a team, social thing as well.
Yes.
For the benefits.
Yes. especially with adolescents, it's really important to feel part of something, I feel. So as you're saying, that's a fantastic plus.
Yes, yes, and I'm not going to repeat all the benefits that you mentioned because I already listed them down in my head, the physical aspect, the mental aspect. But what I'm going to add with what you already excellently mentioned would be the fact that sport or physical activity can be some time away from the dreaded technology that kids these days are so attached to. And maybe it's not them to blame. It could be, we go back to the initial point that parents are both working, they are both tired, and it's very understandable. And the moment that their kids feel like they want something from the parents, they just give them the tablet so that they can just relax a bit, while the kids are happy just getting lost in the tablet. So physical activity and sport can be a way to break that pattern a bit from being too dependent on technology, while at the same time forming these social connections, which I will be talking surely later on this. And at the same time, teaching them the right habits from a very young age, teaching them the love for movement. It doesn't have to be a sport. It doesn't have to be something structured. It can be the simple case of loving to move. And in fact, sometimes I find this, I struggle to understand why we only include PE, physical education, in schools instead of physical activity. Because there's a big discrepancy here. Physical education is already a bit academical, structured, lacking the applied aspect, although there is an applied aspect, don't get me wrong, I love physical education, but it might put people who don't love sport away. So in order to entice people, and this will be mentioning later on as well, in order to entice people, I believe we should just introduce games, and through them, they are actually moving. So, in fact, this would be connected to the aspect of the mind-body connection, where we need to give a mention here to the hormones, because our bodies are made of hormones. And in fact, physical activity and more sport increases the stress hormone first, strangely enough, the cortisol. But this drops down instantly when the other hormones that come out through exercising come out, for example, dopamine, serotonin, endorphins. And these are all sort of natural painkillers. And this is why Sarah mentioned the lowered depression, lowered anxiety, improved sleep, improved memory, because of these hormones. So this is how amazing the mind-body connection can be. And from a young age, they even think of a baby. In order to make their first step, they need to connect their mind with their body to say, I need to lift this up and put it down. I think of this after my surgery when I had to relearn how to walk. It was amazing. I felt like a baby again. So the moment I was faced with a pavement, the first time I went out to walk on my own, I was like, oh crap, how do I do this? How do I lift my feet for the pavement? And I had to connect my mind with my body to actually lift and step. So this is how the mind and body starts getting even more connected through physical activity. And when you have that, you can transfer that in all other life departments, whether it's social, whether it's studying, whether it's getting into a career or something later on in life. So many benefits.
In fact, my next question was going to be, what role does sport and fitness, physical activity play in promoting resilience among youth? But I think you already answered it with the way that it's we have these hormones that are activated, and that's how we kind of, I mean, it's all part and parcel with resilience, like how you mentioned that at first the stress level goes up, but then there's dopamine, there's serotonin, there's all these um,
Yes, yes, exactly. And I know I barged in here instead of Sarah, but to add a bit more to this, what you're saying is the fact that through all that, youngsters and even adults learn to become more disciplined, more patient, which these days patience is nowhere to be seen. Learning to accept failures, that it's okay. Yes, I failed, but that doesn't mean I stop. That means I try again. So that persistence, that knowing what kind of motivation is working for me, because there are different kinds of motivations. And also the fact of learning our values through it, why we do something. So yes, all this is a big cocktail of creating that one glass of resilience.
I don't know.
I really agree with what Dr. Bernice just said, especially the importance between the mind and body. I think that's so inseparable and so important. And in addition, maybe to what Dr. Bernice said, she mentioned some excellent points. Is that also I really believe exercise, again, I kind of mentioned this earlier, can help enhance young people's overall sense of competence. And that then can help them also increase their confidence in dealing with the challenges daily life could throw at them. Apart from that as well, exercise, especially when it's in a group context, Karin, you mentioned this earlier, can also bring about the joy of being with others, and even through the hormones, the enjoyment of the actual physical activity, which in itself can promote resilience through preventing perhaps certain low mood and other anxiety disorders. At the sort of more neurological level as well, there is research that suggests that exercise can also promote neuronal development in neural circuits which are linked to self-regulation, which is something which continues developing in adolescence. So I think that's quite fascinating personally, and that exercise can also have this neurological effect on that could promote resilience. And this altogether, I think all the points you've mentioned can also help prevent youths from turning to harmful ways of coping, like substance use, which would then have, of course, so many negative effects in the long run as well.
Sarah, how can young people balance the demands of sport or physical activity or like general movement and academics in order for them to maintain good mental health?
Okay. I don't perhaps work as much with youth in the school system as much as perhaps Dr. Bernice does, but in my opinion, at least, first of all, I think that parents and educators really need to be on board with this, and also need to be educated about the benefits of exercise for young people. I feel that this is my opinion, at least. I feel that there are still, unfortunately, many parents and adults out there who perhaps do not appreciate just how important physical activity is for young people, and also how it might have positive repercussions for the adolescents' mental health and even their academic achievement. So I think that's one important point, that parents and educators are on board. And also, I think that by sort of having general health behaviors across the board, so for the young person to ensure they're getting enough sleep, for instance, as well, that is important to help them balance the sports and also their education, and that they're having a healthy diet, for instance, as well. And these all come together, I think, to ensure they can balance the two.
Yes, definitely. In fact, nutrition and sleep, I always tackle them, even though I'm not a nutritionist. And I'm not a sleep expert, but I still tackle them because nutrition, sleep, and exercise go hand in hand. And by sleep, I also mean the recovery aspect, because there's also the negative side of too much exercising, which nowadays I'm seeing a lot, where people just go full blast because they get that dopamine kick out of that community feel, that movement, the endorphins out of it, that it becomes addictive. So they need to understand why they're doing that movement, and ensure that they're doing it in a healthy way. Because even if you're not sleeping as much or not eating as you should be eating for your physical activity, you're still not going to improve. So you're still not going to get the best benefit. So balance is in everything. But to add a bit more, because this is something that I get a lot from my clients, how do I balance those two? And even from the parents, please help them, because now they have exams and they still want to go to their sport. And I'm like, they can do the two together. The thing is efficient time management. So I always end up drawing a big timetable with them, making it as fun as possible so that it doesn't look like the school timetable. And we try to see where they're wasting time mostly. And most of the time it would be phone use. Then we try to see what we can swap, what we can input a bit more there, where we can add some support from other people, maybe the parents, maybe a teacher, maybe a coach, maybe even someone from multidisciplinary team if they're in a sport which is professional. So maybe the physio, the nutritionist, the psychologist, whoever. But also prioritizing. And this is not only for kids or youngsters, this is also for adults. So we need to understand what's important now at this point in time. And sometimes, yes, although I'm a big believer that you need balance, even including social time, maybe even if you want to go out with a friend and you have school and you have sport demands, but sometimes during maybe exams and competitions period, social time would be the one that might get affected the most. But it's okay, they need to understand that it's only temporary, because I insist that they need to be having a social time. Sometimes people are so obsessed with exercise and sports, especially, that they don't even go out, because yes, sports is giving them that social aspect, but sometimes they also need time away from their sport. But in this case, for those who don't do any physical activity, still prioritizing is healthy because most of the time people tell you, I don't have time to do it. So if they look in a tangible way by writing it down to see where they're spending their time, I'm sure they would find an extra 45 minutes that they dedicate to their social media, which they can put away and just do some good for their body.
Very interesting explanation. You mentioned competitions, and I would like to go on to that now. Bernice, you're an athlete yourself. You also mentioned your clients, so feel free to give both perspectives. With regards to competitions, are there any rituals that you practice that help you prepare yourself mentally when it comes to competitions or, I don't know, big events in physical sports?
I believe this is quite a lifelong process kind of thing, because, as I said, the environment is quite a fluid environment. We as human beings are quite fluid as well, so we're constantly changing. So maybe what I needed last year is not what I need this year. But what I constantly do is I self-reflect a lot. And I also combine that with some meditation techniques, not to the extreme amounts. I'm not a monk, not the hippie-ish kind of meditation, because some people are scared from meditation, hippie. No, it's not that. It's just a simple space, which I normally do after training, even though I would be so hungry that I want to eat the whole kitchen right after. But after training, I dedicate 3 to 5 minutes just focusing on my breathing space to train my mind. And by doing that, I am combining the mental and body aspect connection. And research suggests that the gray matter in our brain increases by doing this simple thing. And the more gray matter we have, the more connections we have with our different lobes in our brain, which means we are doing things more efficiently. So having better memory, better concentration, better decision making, and all that. So that is one thing I try to keep. And when I tend to reduce a bit that activity, I instantly feel I'm losing it. I need to introduce it again. So that is one thing I abide by 100%. Also, I try to write down the stuff that I'm doing, even if it's the programming that I'm doing. I write down every single thing that I do every day during my workout to celebrate the small successes. Because success doesn't mean winning a medal, winning a cup or whatever. Success means every single day enjoying that you maybe lifted a bit more or increase the rep or reduce the rest period in my kind of sport. It can be many different things in other people's sports. Apart from that, I also ensure that I have the right support system around me. So I'm very close to my family, thankfully, which they tend to hear a lot of my whining sometimes, especially when I'm on peak season. And also the right sports science stuff. I have an excellent coach which have been with me right after the surgery. Also a nutritionist, also sometimes sports massage. It's very costly, as you can see. But in sports, if you want to always improve, you need to have the right support staff around you. And I already mentioned this before, patience. You can't expect to be somewhere high and expect that things are going to come up with a click of a finger. Even with people who want to lose weight, you can't expect, you've been eating all your life, you can't expect to lose weight in 1 week of dieting. You need to reverse that lifetime binging. So be patient. Even with muscles, I mean, you go to the gym every single day to train your muscles. So that's the same way you need to train the mind in order to be strong, confident, and accepting everything and be resilient at the end of the day, because that's the title of this talk. So like you train your body in a gym, you need to train your mind regularly as well.
Bernice, can I take this one step further if you don't mind?
Yeah, go ahead.
You suggest to your clients, specifically younger people, to handle pressure and expectations in sports. And I'm not just saying external pressure, but also our own expectations of ourselves.
When it comes to pressure, I always tell them one main thing. First of all, normalize pressure, because you're in a competitive setting. It's obvious. You have people observing you. It's obvious that you're going to feel some pressure. And if there's no pressure, there's something wrong. I mean, even performers, when they're on stage, they always say that before I go out on stage, I always feel the butterflies, but turn them into excitement, reframe that. The same biological procedures that happen with anxiety happen with excitement. So sweaty palms, dry mouth, heart beating faster, all these feeling a bit all over the place. All these things are the same with anxiety and excitement. So if you start reframing it and saying, this is exciting, this is important for me, and I'm finally have the space and time to show the effort I've been putting every single day on my own sometimes, because if it's an individual sport, you have to do it on your own every single day. It can be very nasty. So use that time to actually showcase all the effort you've been putting in. And also then there are some techniques like grounding, where you use, for example, the senses to actually be present there at that moment in time. Like sometimes I tell them, touch something, for example, which you find in front of you or that you'll be using. If it's a CrossFit competition, touch the barbell. If it's a bodybuilding competition, maybe arrange a bit the bikini that you'll be wearing. Or maybe before, grab some resistance bands and touch them. Or sense of smell something. Or sense of sight, focus on something that doesn't have to do with the competition, where you'll be focusing there, where you switch that concentration from thinking mind all over the place to zoom there. Then there's also the breathing space. So if you've been doing it before, it will become very much easier on the day to have a breathing space, 2-3 deep breaths, and just let go. It will become much easier if you've been doing it regularly before setting on foot on stage. But yeah, merging all this together, pressure is a good thing. Every time I have a talk, I'll be on TV, I'll have to perform, it's the same thing for me. I always get that. I wonder how I will be received. I wonder whether I managed to talk things out freely. I wonder if I managed to, when I was gonna step on stage for bodybuilding the first time, I was like, if I don't fall on stage, that's a huge win for me. Because being an athlete and high heels don't match. So then I had to deal with the aspect that you're on high heels and you're putting the body in very difficult positions for posing, which in the beginning I used to think, but I'm not a model. I don't like the image of me being a model. It's not for aesthetics for me. It's for the muscle aspect, seeing how you can sculpt the body better and better every single time that you compete. So the act that I've reframed it in my mind, I said, okay, so I'm a sculptor now. Let me see how far I can dig to actually bring out a better sculpture next year. That way I started seeing it, now it's no longer that model person going on stage, which I don't have anything against them. It's more of a personal thing. I love the muscle aspect, the bigger, seeing the strength, the improvement that one can do. So reframing things in one's mind and also focusing on that very moment as being the moment to showcase the effort, I believe that's the way to deal with pressure.
Lots of interesting points. How important are support systems and how they contribute to young people's mental well-being, the support, the external support system?
First of all, I think we've both mentioned this at some point. It's really important that sort of there is support from the peers, especially with adolescents, but also parents in exercising. There are a lot of theories of health behavior in health psychology which show just how important sort of subjective norms, we call them basically. So how other people also see the desired behavior, how that then impacts the young person's intention to actually engage in this case exercise or another health behavior. So if, for example, a young person's peers are not really interested in exercise, then a young person might be less likely themselves to engage in exercise. And also, I think Bernice mentioned this earlier as well, that it's really important that for sports to boost your own sense of self-worth and confidence, you need to have a strong support system and feel that it's a safe place to fail at times. Otherwise, sport, just like any other thing, really could lead to the person having or developing a fear of failure, and that's never going to be a good thing for anyone, for sure. So basically, we really need to kind of try and create a culture where parents and coaches especially help young people feel good and strong, even when they lose or perform poorly. And I think this is kind of what comes behind the importance of support systems and youth's mental health in this case.
What advice would you give to your peers who may be struggling with mental health issues and are considering getting involved in physical activity or some kind of sport?
Okay. So first of all, I would say perhaps start easy. Don't set overly ambitious goals. So not going from doing nothing to suddenly, for example, saying I'm going to be, I don't know, running every day of the week. And first of all, you might risk injury. But apart from that, what I tend to see a lot, especially when it comes to working with clients with obesity, is that when people set goals which are too high, you're more likely to fail and to lose courage to continue. Also, especially if there is an individual who is actually already experiencing depression or anxiety or another mental health issue, it can be really, really difficult to actually feel any joy or pleasure in doing anything. So in the beginning, I actually make this clear to them. And I would tell a peer in this case, because I believe that was the question, like, please don't be surprised if you don't feel that pleasure in the beginning, but focus also on that sense of mastery, on the process, on the sense, hey, I did it. I did this even though it was a struggle. And I should be proud because my determination allowed me to do it, even if it was just a 20-minute walk, for an example. Later on, then the pleasure and satisfaction very often tends to come, even through the hormonal process that Bernice mentioned before. I think also that getting the support or encouragement of a friend can be very helpful, especially to get started, and choosing a sport that they think they would like and also feel more confident in is really, really important. I mentioned a bit before also the idea of health behavior change theories. And again, sort of one other important aspect is how much control the person feels that they have in actually doing that activity. So how accessible is it for the young person? How much do they think that they would be able to engage in that sport as well is really, really important. And also their attitudes. What do they think the outcomes of engaging in that sport are going to be? So I would maybe encourage them to reflect a little bit on this as well, to choose something that they are more likely to enjoy and to benefit from and keep up as well.
Is there anything you would like to add to that, Bernice?
To be honest, she mentioned all the main things, and maybe the only thing I would add is to tell them to, before they start, to actually write why they're starting. So they attach the value, because there will be times when you hit a plateau, sort of. So maybe you start, yes, but you feel like, I've been doing this for a month and I'm not seeing any improvement. At that point, they go back to that why of starting, which would be connected to what they really are after, rather than what society tells them why they should be doing the exercise, and actually stick to it, because that why makes things more sustainable. And also, if they get more into the sport, if it's sport rather than exercise, they might remain clean and not go for ways like doping or stuff, which I'm seeing loads of these days. And it's such a pity seeing people, in order to get that extra edge, even if they're not competing at a very, very high level, they still resort to these things. And it's such a sad thing to see. And even the very low infertility rates would be one of the causes which might be affecting this. I'm not saying all the infertility rates are because of this, but this is one thing that is causing youngsters these days to have low infertility rates, because they are resorting to these substance abuses in order to give them an edge and maybe be more accepted in their sport or seen in a better light in their sport, because they're doing much more movement. They're never getting tired. The recovery is amazing. So maybe having that why would help protect you to sustain that healthy behavior and keeping it healthy.
Makes a lot of sense, even like I am mentally comparing it to my personal goal setting. I remember the first time I went to the gym, I told myself I want to be stronger. And now every time I go, you mentioned it earlier as well, it's almost like an addiction. The stronger I feel, the stronger I want to get. Thank you again for that. So the is that we kind of present it to people who can make decisions, decision makers, politicians. So if you could speak directly to these decision makers, what would you want them to understand about the importance of physical activity on the mental health of youths in this case, but obviously on mental health in general as well? I don't know if you want to go, Bernice, want to continue?
Okay, so I'm focusing a bit more on the physical activity aspect here rather than the sporting aspect. So because these days we are trying to improve the obesity thing. So from a policy making, politicians, decision makers point of view, I think tackling the physical activity part might be the very initial step to start with. And to be honest, they first need to promote that any movement is important. So if we target that, we even value a bit more, like what I mentioned earlier, dividing physical education and physical activity, and start promoting games and fun stuff to move people, rather than this is a subject that you can choose. So that would attract people more. It would even attract people who, I remember when I was younger, I used to be bullied because I was quite chubby. And I felt that since I'm chubby, I don't fit within sports. So I never chose PE because I felt I don't fit in, although I needed it more. But my mind told me, I'm chubby, I don't fit in that era, stage, subject, whatever. So if then there would be games, I would be the first one in, because it's games. It doesn't have to do with being assessed, being marked for what you're doing. Apart from that, the seated times in schools, in meetings, that's a big thing. I'm seeing schools nowadays, in fact, I think the National Sports School are doing this, that they constantly move the room they are in between one lesson and the other. And although some kids hate it, but as a long-term thing, if you look at it in a long-term view, it's very healthy. Because I remember myself, all the teachers in secondary school used to tell my mom that I'm very distracted. Because obviously, if you sit me longer than 1 hour on a chair, I start doing every single movement and moving around because I want to move. It's the natural aspect of the body. And sometimes we are calling these, he's hyperactive. So we're giving them a title and they can move as much as they want. In reality, kids need to move. So let them move. And if, yes, schooling is important, so make schooling different. Even outdoor education. Now we are having these Project Green initiatives, for example, where we're having green areas in every single village eventually. So let's make use of that and move some lessons into these green areas, which are going to be available in every single village. So every school will have some green area somewhere. Yes, there might be logistic issues, there might be ethical issues, there might be needing more human resources because you need more people with a group of youngsters outside. But this is something to start looking forward to, and also promoting any life movement. So we all know that with prompts and posters or something, it can help improve behaviors of people by example, for example, taking the stairs instead of the lifts, or maybe even make it a fun thing. Whoever takes the stairs gets an incentive, or even nowadays, even companies are incentivizing gym memberships, subsidizing gym memberships in order to promote more physical activity. Some managers even join the employees to actually lead by example and promote that I am doing it, so you can do it as well. And that even connects employees together, for example, and this can be done even in schools. The teachers doing the exercising and the kids would just follow. It doesn't have to be a PE teacher that moves. So nowadays we can even teach through movement, and any subject, it can be English. So we can, once there was a movie, if I'm not mistaken, where the teacher was, I can't remember the name at this very point, but the teacher was teaching every single subject through music. So and the fact that there was music and it was fun, and these were kids coming from difficult backgrounds, so they didn't want to even bother about school, then they started getting excited about learning. So we need to make learning fun in order to actually enjoy school and at the same time move. So let's merge everything together rather than seeing it as movement on its own, school on its own, and all that, and merge it all together. And that way we're teaching that learning can be fun and we're moving at the same time as well.
Sarah, I would like to hear your perspective as well with regards to we're talking about speaking directly to these decision makers about the importance of body movements, we can call it, on youth mental health.
First of all, I think that Bernice had some really interesting ideas, and I agree really much with I'm very much sorry with the idea of making it fun as well. From my end, I'm sort of seeing things a bit more almost from like the public health perspective. I would really emphasize with policymakers the preventive role of physical activity from the mental health side, sort of how much it can prevent also mental health problems in young people, and also the extent of disability mental health issues can cause. Also, adolescents or young people are a really good group of people to intervene with, because young people, the health behaviors that they establish at a young age are more likely for them to be carried with them as they grow older. So if we can get youths to really appreciate and include physical activity in their lives at a young age, they're more likely to keep it up. as they grow older. And as I already mentioned, mental health then is associated, poor mental health is associated with a number of poor physical health behaviors, poor diet as well, increased obesity. So if we can sort of intervene in this regard, the governments can really save literally millions, if not more, on healthcare costs and public expenditure for healthcare. So it's really has a lot of advantages for all those involved, even financial, and also enhancing the quality of life of the population, because physical and mental health are both very much tied to a good quality of life. So I would emphasize that aspect more.
Okay. Are there perhaps any specific initiatives that you've seen or you've noticed in other European countries that you would perhaps suggest that Malta could take on or implement as well? I mean, go ahead. I don't know. Fideka.
No, to be honest, I already mentioned a lot of things that can be done, but maybe what I see lacking a bit would be a bit more education on what's in our food, for example, because yes, we are mentioning movement, but what's in our food? Even I'm very happy to start seeing places where they are showing proteins, carbs, and fats, but on their own, you're not showing anything. You need to show saturated fat, salt, sugar. Those are what really matter. So yes, I'm very happy to start seeing people more conscious about what they're eating, and not in an eating disorder kind of fashion where you obsess, how many calories do I have here? Oh, so I should not be eating this. I should never eat out at all. No. Sometimes, if you understand what's in your food, for example, yes, it has 600 calories, but most of it is coming from good fats, good carbs, and a substantial amount of protein, and very few sugars. So amazing. Give me those 600 calories. So I believe we still are lacking when it comes to understanding nutrition and how it combines with movement. So we do not eat to satisfy some kind of happy factor in our brain. We eat to fuel our movement. So if you're doing minor movement, you don't need to eat a lot of food, and make it as clean as possible as well. It always has to be as clean as possible, ideally, but those who at least do work out, or for example, know that they have a marathon, they would afford some sugar there. But understanding what nutrition is and what's in our food, and especially cleaner food that is coming from local places that doesn't have added pesticides or preservatives or whatever, the better. Because yes, we are talking about physical movement here, physical activity, but it can't be discussed without discussing nutrition. And the more you, especially in our sport, bodybuilding, and especially if you're doing it naturally, every single thing that you change, even if you change the brand of elements you're eating, is gonna cause a difference in your body. So this is how I'm not telling people to go to that obsessive state. No, it's not healthy. This is only for competitors. But it's very important to understand what's in our food. And especially, I was doing a pilot study, for example, where we introduced nutritional information, full nutritional information in a restaurant. And the restaurant accepted to be our participant. And I was impressed with how much sugar and saturated fat all the plates had. So this is quite crazy. So I think this is something that, especially this is connected with Europe, something that on a European level, it can be promoted more to not just show carbs, fats, and protein, but show saturated fats, salt, and sugar as well. And from a sport point of view, I believe to have clearer sporting pathways, which in Malta we are already improving. Even we are giving funds to Olympic athletes, but not all of them, unfortunately. So there is improvement, and sport is only the beginning stages in Malta. I'm sure it's going to improve way more, but we still are lacking a clear pathway for athletes. Starting from grassroots and having a natural step where to go when they finish here, where to go when they finish here, where to go when they finish here. So I believe following, for example, Sport England, they are doing an amazing job with this. And I believe Malta is going in that direction, but let's just have a deeper look at this.
Thank you. I think you've raised some really important points, some very interesting points as well. It's also time to start to conclude. Can I ask if you have any final words of advice specifically for young people?
I'll give the mic to you, Sarah, and then I'll
Okay.
finish off because
All
I've been talking too much now.
It's fine. I just want to add maybe that I really, really agree with what you just mentioned, Bernice. I work a lot with adults, many of whom are overweight, and many of them have no idea how to understand nutritional information. So very often that's something I'll end up trying to help them myself with, or refer them on to a dietitian in this case. And something I'd also like to add is also more awareness about portion sizes in our country, and also an awareness of why am I eating, because we don't just eat for physical reasons, my body needs more calories, but also there's the emotional aspect, which I see a lot of, and the social aspect, especially in our culture where we eat for every social reason practically. So any final words of advice for young people? I would, in a nutshell, basically say never underestimate the link between the mind and the body, and that true well-being really requires a balance and an appreciation of the physical, the psychological, and the social as well altogether. So that's what I would say.
And as a final thing from my end, then I have two analogies to finish with. One, the similar way you train the body to improve, you need to train the mind to improve. And that's through simple things as breathing exercises, knowing what is self-care for you, maybe a walk by the sea, a walk in nature, maybe a talk with a friend, but having those things that you know will help you take a bit of a break and get back to life, to get back stronger. And also the second analogy would be comparing the body to a machine. I always say this. If you don't use it, it will get rusty and it will no longer work. If you overuse it, you will have wear and tear issues and it will still not work properly. So learn to know where the balance is. And you will learn that by listening to your body and connecting the body to the mind.
Thank you. Thanks a lot to both of you. I feel that I got a real lot out of it, and I'm sure that anyone following will feel the same way. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching our podcast. We hope you found it fruitful. So, what are we going to do with these podcasts?
On the 11th of May at the Valletta Design Cluster, our young people will be sharing the results of these podcasts and the research around the project to our guests, which will include MEPs and MEP candidates of the upcoming election.
Join us on the 11th of May at the Valletta Design Cluster by registering through the link on this post or by contacting us on info@ymcamalta.org.
See you there.